Are you tired of making choices? Exhausted by the burden of deciding where to live, what to read, who to vote for, and how to think? You might consider getting yourself a North Korean citizenship. Here, the state handles everything: housing, news, politics, even your afternoon emotions. So you don't have to worry about all of these. In a world of unstable markets and complicated freedoms, our kingdom offers stability by removing most variables, including your UK bonds and S&P index. DPRK benefits include free housing that you'll never have to buy or sell because you can't. Our free healthcare system won't surprise you with bills. Your employment is guaranteed and chosen by professionals who've never met you. Besides, the kingdom has zero immigration drama because absolutely no one is trying to cut the line. Your passport is refreshingly uncluttered by stamps. International travel is simple, it just doesn't happen. Community life is strong, thanks to an attentive neighbourhood watch that values your privacy enough to check on it daily. Education is universal and efficient. One curriculum, one narrative, no spoilers. Culture is carefully curated by the supreme leaders. Every film is tested for ideological purity, and every concert is free from decadent improvisation. Think of it as a spiritual spa retreat for the anxious voter. No elections, no campaigning, no awkward debates in front of talk show hosts. So if you're worn out by the chaos of choice and the nuisance of nuance, why not trade up to best Korea? Paradise on earth may be a strong phrase, but it's remarkable what paradise can look like when the exit is optional and the entrance is unforgettable. Wondering how? This is your North Korea immigration guide. But before we dig into today's story, a brief interruption about our financial reality. We are a humble channel with no brand deals or sponsorships, so please consider supporting our research and production by joining our membership program. Different tiers are available, and they all come with gratitude. Starting from the second tier, you will have early access to our future episodes. Nothing changes for non-members. All our shows will be publicly released for free. In our magic kingdom, all viewers are equal. Just some viewers are more equal than others. Okay, now, let's dig in. Let's be honest, North Korea is not a land of opportunity for the wandering soul. In fact, it's practically an anti-immigration nation. Under the 1963 Citizenship Law of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, a North Korean citizen is defined as anyone who resides within the territory and whose parents are citizens of the Republic. That's it. No green card, no naturalization ceremony, just lineage and geography, preferably both. Article 5 clarifies that 4 conditions guarantee your place in the socialist family. First, born to North Korean parents. In this case, congratulations, you are instantly enrolled in the world's longest-running national loyalty program. A child born to 2 North Korean parents is automatically blessed with the right to live under juche, even if born abroad. Second, born in North Korea to one parent who is a citizen and another who is either foreign or stateless. This ensures that even if your father is a wandering Marxist poet or your mother is a confused tourist, the newborn will still owe allegiance to Pyongyang. Third, born in North Korea to stateless parents. The logic is impeccable. If no other country wants you, North Korea will. Finally, born in North Korea to unknown parents. In most places, a foundling is a tragedy. In North Korea, it's a legal opportunity. If no one claims you, the state will. Abandonment is just another path to belonging.
motor repairman Kwak Konggun says, "At first we lived in a one-room house. As my family members increased, the state gave me another 4-room house gratis."
Wait, how about our aspiring foreigners? Can we join the socialist family through marriage? Unfortunately, according to Article 11 of the Citizenship Law, citizenship does not change because of marriage, divorce, adoption, or termination of adoption. In simpler terms, love is temporary, but citizenship is forever. This article quietly solves problems that plague other nations. While most countries wrestle with messy questions like, should a foreign spouse get a visa, or what happens to a child adopted abroad, North Korea has taken the minimalist route. The answer is no. Nothing would happen. A North Korean who marries a foreigner does not become less North Korean. A foreigner who marries a North Korean does not become more so. Remember, no fake marriage green card for your opportunist capitalists. Article 6 gives a generous promise that a stateless person or a citizen of another country may, upon application, acquire the nationality of the DPRK. However, Article 15 states that the application must be approved by the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly to naturalize someone as a citizen. In short, the DPRK citizenship is not a contract, but a condition. Foreigners seeking naturalization must demonstrate loyalty to the Republic and satisfy certain criteria. And you must think carefully that, once you join the Juche land, there might not be an exit plan. The North Korean citizenship law is a legal masterpiece of socialist minimalism. One people, one leader, zero exit strategy.
When Kim Il-sung wanted to provide an ice rink and a wading pool for young people and children, Kim Jong-il had them built.
Now let's face the reality. North Korea rarely allows foreign nationals to immigrate permanently, and most documented immigrants are actually North Koreans returning after time abroad, often former defectors lured back by Pyongyang's promises of cash and comfort. Meanwhile, the vast majority of North Koreans who leave do so illegally as refugees, not through any normal migration process. This is a country that calls itself a socialist paradise, but treats movement as a crime. The state monitors and controls all border crossings. Unauthorized travel abroad is literally punishable by law. In the kingdom, even a tourist visa is a privilege given only to select nationalities on regimented tours, and some nationals are outright banned from visiting as tourists. Yet, immigrating to North Korea is not entirely impossible, as the citizenship law permits. A few pathways exist for the determined or the extremely well-qualified. Before everything, ask yourself, who are you? Are you an ethnic Korean living in diaspora? Or do you have any exceptional qualities? Because ask not what your future country can do for you, ask what you can do for your future country.
In our country, there is no unemployed man. Working people climb up the steep road to the Busan Ridge with conviction and optimism.
The only way to get into North Korea is to be so useful or unique that the regime wants you there. In a land that distrusts foreigners, a select few have been invited because they possess skills or expertise prized by the ruling elite. Call this the technical immigration route, North Korea's version of a talent visa. The most famous example might be Kenji Fujimoto, a Japanese sushi chef who became Kim Jong-il's personal cook. Fujimoto spent at least 13 years inside the kingdom, serving delicate ramen and sashimi to the Kim family. According to his own memoir, he gained intimate access to the court of the dear leader, an almost impossible position for a foreigner, let alone someone from the hostile country of Japan. How did he get there? Essentially, Kim Jong-il loved good sushi, but no native Korean chef satisfied his appetite, so he imported the talent to make it. Fujimoto was living proof that if you have a niche ability that tickles the dictator's craving, North Korea might make an exception and let you in. Of course, Fujimoto's story didn't end with happily ever after in Pyongyang. In 2001, sensing the danger of knowing too much, he fled the country by telling Kim he needed to go buy sea urchins for dinner, and never came back. He escaped to Japan, wrote tell-all books about the Kim regime, became a marked man, and kept hiding from haunting North Korean agents. But in a twist almost too odd for fiction, North Korea invited him back years later. In 2012, our dear leader passed away, and the new leader, Kim Jong-un, warmly welcomed Fujimoto for a 2-week visit, personally hosting a reception for him and telling the chef he was always welcome in North Korea. The regime, it seems, brought back its old sushi chef both as a propaganda ploy and perhaps to keep him from saying anything too damaging abroad. Kenji Fujimoto then settled in North Korea indefinitely, living with his North Korean singer wife, and opened a Japanese restaurant called Takahashi. Fujimoto's case highlights a pattern. North Korea will bend its rules for foreigners who serve a direct need of the leadership, whether it's culinary luxury, prestige projects, or specialized knowledge. It's not just chefs. In rare instances, scientists, engineers, and educators have lived in North Korea when they had something North Korea wanted, just under an extremely controlled environment. Foreign academics have taught at Pyongyang universities, for example, and a few hand-picked Westerners work for humanitarian NGOs. These are not immigrants who buy houses and settle down freely. They are guest workers on short leashes, often confined to specific compounds. Still, they represent a tiny window through which an outsider can reside in the kingdom for an extended period of time. If you ever fantasized about moving to Pyongyang, ask yourself, what can I offer that Kim Jong-un personally desires? Fluency in nuclear physics might do it. So might expertise in building monuments, or an uncanny ability to coach athletes. I guess helping North Korea win the World Cup might help. But remember, even entering the kingdom in this way, life as a foreign technical expert won't be easy. You won't integrate into the local society, but will remain isolated and monitored. Privacy is non-existent. Your phone calls are tapped and your conversations subtly steered away from taboo topics. You are, in effect, in North Korea, but not of North Korea. Even if you can live in the kingdom for decades, you still cannot walk down a street unescorted or talk to a regular North Korean family freely in their home. Nonetheless, technical immigration remains one of the few semi-viable paths for a foreigner to be in North Korea long-term without having a pair of Juche parents. Besides, you're invited for a purpose, and if that purpose ends, or if you displease the regime, expect the invitation to expire. Fujimoto undoubtedly learned this the hard way.
When we were shaking hands this time, he pulled my hands and hugged me again. We can talk heart to heart. Kim Jong-un and I are in such relationship.
In reality, it's more likely that you're not a master chef nor a rocket scientist. Instead, you may have money, lots of money, and that kind of business acumen that even a secretive communist state finds useful and attractive. Is there a way to buy your way into North Korea? In theory, yes. North Korea has, at times, courted foreign investors to bring in capital. The Supreme People's Assembly even passed laws to encourage foreign investment and set up special economic zones to sweeten the deal. If you show up with a suitcase full of cash or technology, Pyongyang might roll out a modified red carpet. But tread carefully. The list of would-be foreign tycoons in North Korea is short, and mostly consists of people who ended up in jail. Well, interestingly, usually not North Korean jails. The emblematic tale here is Yang Bin, a Chinese-born billionaire who, for one brief moment, became arguably the highest-profile immigrant in North Korea. Yang Bin was a Dutch citizen of Chinese origin, a flamboyant orchid tycoon, listed as one of the richest men in China in the early 2000s. In 2002, Kim Jong-il made a startling move. He announced plans to build an innovative, special administrative region in the city of Sinuiju on the Chinese border, meant to be a laboratory of market reforms. And who did Kim tap to run this experiment? Yang Bin, the foreign businessman, was named the chief executive of Sinuiju SAR, essentially North Korea's would-be capitalist governor. Oh, by the way, the gonna-be governor planned to run casinos to attract Chinese gamblers and to create its own currency. Yang Bin was reportedly offered North Korean citizenship, or at least a senior political post. For a few dizzying days, he was the face of market opening in North Korea, a living symbol that if you brought enough investment, you could not only immigrate, but be placed in charge of a piece of the country. What happened next was highly predicted and darkly comedic. Yang's motherland, China, was not amused by Yang's bold plan. Beijing had not fully agreed to this scheme on its northeast frontier, and Chinese authorities moved quickly. Within weeks of his high-profile appointment, Yang Bin was arrested by Chinese police for economic crimes, allegedly tax evasion on his Chinese businesses. By the next year, Yang Bin was sitting in a Chinese prison, eventually sentenced to 18 years on a list of charges. The legend of North Korea's greatest foreign investor ended before it even got started. So, Kim Jong-il's bold plan to import a capitalist wizard collapsed almost overnight, leaving the Sinuiju project in limbo. Yang Bin immigrated to North Korea in a blaze of glory and left in the back of a police car. The Yang Bin saga illustrates the perils of trying to do business in or with North Korea. On paper, North Korea wants foreign investors. It has laws allowing 100% foreign-owned enterprises. The government gives you special tax breaks, etc. The idea of a wealthy outsider gaining residency by investing in the country isn't entirely far-fetched. In reality, a small number of Chinese border town businessmen have lived in North Korea to oversee joint ventures or run restaurants and trade companies. These individuals might be considered a form of investor immigrant, though they usually don't get citizenship but just long-term visas, thanks to their valuable contribution to the Juche economy. North Korea has even created zones like Rason in the northeast, where Chinese and Russian investors get a bit more leeway, or invited foreign firms to build infrastructure. If you have millions of dollars and a high risk tolerance, you can do the same. Pyongyang might hand you a residency permit and a prestigious title. However, the risks and oddities are immense. Your investment can be seized or nullified on a whim if political winds change. You pour money into a promising project, but only to shred your shoulders when the regime decides to nationalize it later. Your operation will be under constant suspicion and surveillance. And, like Yang Bin learned, even if North Korea is okay with you, your own home country might not be. Your government, whether the US or China, wasn't going to let one of its citizens effectively run a zone in North Korea and potentially divert loyalties. Any Western investor would face sanctions and legal trouble back home for doing too much business with Pyongyang. In short, buying your way in is a high-wire act with the net removed. The very few who attempt it either keep a very low profile or eventually get burned. One more note on this route. North Korea did at one point offer something akin to free trade zone citizenship. In the early 1990s, there were discussions of allowing ethnic Korean investors from abroad to get North Korean residency if they revitalized certain rural towns, like inviting Korean Americans or European diaspora to create a special administrative zone. Little ever came of these ideas beyond occasional trial balloons. The truth is, the regime ideally wants foreign money without foreign people. Our supreme leader would rather you wire in funds from Beijing than have you physically living in Pyongyang. When it does accept a living, breathing investor, it will treat him like a controlled asset, not a free migrant. Yang Bin got a fancy title, but he was always going to be a fall guy if things went south. And indeed, things went south almost immediately. The third theoretical path to making North Korea your permanent home is family ties, what most countries would call family-based immigration or repatriation. Do you have North Korean relatives? Ethnic Korean heritage? In most nations, having a spouse or family member who's a citizen can put you on a fast track to residency. In North Korea, this is a far trickier strategy, but it has happened in certain forms. For ethnic Koreans living abroad, especially in the post-Korean War decades, North Korea branded itself as the true homeland and the best Korea. At times, Kim Il-sung invited the Korean diaspora in Japan and China to come live in the DPRK. The most significant example was the Grand Repatriation Campaign, which we'll explore in detail in the next section. Essentially, it was an immigration program that brought over 93,000 ethnic Koreans from Japan to North Korea. Many of those were the children or grandchildren of Koreans from southern Korea who'd wound up in Japan, and North Korea offered them an ancestral return, a pathway that, sadly, South Korea refused to offer. That campaign was essentially family immigration on a mass scale, and, as we'll see, it was riddled with deception. In today's context, family-based immigration to North Korea is exceedingly rare, but not entirely unheard of. If you are a Korean living abroad and genuinely want to live in the North for ideological or familial reasons. For instance, there have been a handful of cases of South Koreans defecting to North Korea to join spouses or parents who are in the North. A notable case was Chae Dok-sin and Roo Mi-young, whom we already had a separate episode about. This South Korean couple defected to North Korea in 1986. They were prominent people in the South who served critical roles in the South junta governments. Relocated to Pyongyang, they became political figureheads, and their move was propagandized as a family reunification of sorts. Decades later, their son, Chae In-guk, also went north, saying he was returning to where his loyalties lay. These are unusual cases. Effectively, these are family reunion stories, but in the opposite direction of what we normally see. Pyongyang, of course, trumpets such rare defections as proof of its socialist appeal. The reality is that only a tiny number of people with family ties have chosen to immigrate to North Korea in recent years, often out of ideological conviction or disillusionment elsewhere. When they do, they're treated both as propaganda tools and with a degree of mistrust. One does not simply stroll in and become an ordinary North Korean. Again, even if you have family there, you'll be viewed as an outsider, possibly kept under close watch. Another family-based route is marriage. There have been instances of foreigners marrying North Koreans and residing in the best Korea. During the after-war repatriation, for example, about 6,000 Japanese wives accompanied their Korean husbands to North Korea. These women were effectively immigrant spouses. Unfortunately, their fate was often grim. Many ended up trapped and even purged in the 1970s when they begged to go back to Japan. In more recent times, one might consider the odd story of US Army defectors who went to North Korea in the 1960s and were given Eastern European wives by the state. Those wives from countries like Romania or Lebanon essentially immigrated to North Korea via marriage, albeit likely not entirely by choice, but by scam and kidnapping. Such cases are exceedingly rare and shrouded in Cold War secrecy, but they did occur. It's telling that these examples were decades old. The concept of an international marriage and a happy family life in Pyongyang is not a common 21st century tale. Today, if an ordinary foreigner were to somehow marry a North Korean, say a foreign student secretly dates and weds a North Korean citizen, getting permission to live together in North Korea would be an uphill bureaucratic battle. The North Korean citizen would likely face scrutiny for having a foreign spouse. The foreign spouse would not automatically receive citizenship or even a long-term visa without special discernment from the party leaders. They might instead pressure the North Korean spouse to come out of the country, which the state tends to forbid. In short, love is not a straightforward ticket in. Bloodline matters greatly to Pyongyang, but only the right kind of blood. Ethnic Koreans from friendly territory, like pro-North communities in Japan or China, had some value as brethren returnees during the Cold War. But even they often found themselves classified as second-class citizens according to the regime's Songbun caste system, into a politically suspect category. North Korea's approach to any would-be immigrant, even a long-lost cousin, is summed up by one word: suspicion. Family ties might open the door a crack, but trust me, there will be a guard on the other side peering through that crack. If you happen to be an ethnic Korean dreaming of moving to Pyongyang to reconnect with your roots, you'd better be prepared for a rude awakening, the kind many Japanese Korean families had when they went in search of paradise, only to discover the gates closing behind them. And if you're not Korean at all, marrying into North Korea would be like marrying into a mafia. You may gain a family, but you are not trusted enough to become one of us. No matter which path is taken, skillful expert, investor, or family ties, anyone who does manage to immigrate to North Korea faces a landscape of restrictions and absurdities that make normal life impossible. These things typically await the successful immigrant. First, you would face a bureaucratic maelstrom. Everything in North Korea requires permission, paperwork, and political vetting. As a newcomer, you won't have the all-important Songbun social classification that natives are born into. You'll effectively be in a limbo, likely under the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or State Security's purview. Expect that your housing, your job, and even your grocery trips are assigned by the state. You cannot simply choose where to live or what work to do. These will be arranged for you, just like other North Koreans. A foreign investor might be given an office and an official minder who acts as a liaison. A returning ethnic Korean might be settled in a monitored district among others of similar background, rather than among local families. Normal immigration concerns like getting a driver's license or opening a bank account are trivial compared to the larger concern of being under lifelong, constant surveillance. Second, about your socialist benefits. North Korea famously promises its people free housing, free education, and free healthcare. If you become a permanent resident, you will receive these state-provided benefits. The catch is what they actually entail. Housing is indeed allocated by the government. You don't pay rent because you don't own anything. The state assigns you an apartment on its assessment of your rank and importance. But don't picture a comfortable abode you can renovate or sell. Private property in housing is illegal, and buying or selling homes is technically a crime. Also, your tiny home comes with basically no modern home appliances and facilities. The state assigns you a house and can kick you out at any time. In practice, A black market exists for better dwellings. Bribery can get you a better flat, but as an immigrant, you won't have those connections. So, free housing often means you live where you're told, like it or not. And if you ever leave the country, your home reverts to the state. Similarly, free healthcare in North Korea is the ultimate irony. Yes, hospitals theoretically charge nothing, but go there once and you quickly learn why. Most hospitals barely function. A report by Amnesty International describes hospitals with no electricity or heat, surgeries done by candlelight without anesthesia, and pharmacies empty of medicine. We have covered some of the medical realities in North Korea in our Pyongyang General Hospital episode. Doctors often demand bribes or payments in kind because the state supplies nothing and pays them almost nothing. So while the government will proudly tell you everything is free, the reality is you might need to bring your own anesthesia for an operation, or you can willingly endure surgery fully conscious. An immigrant seeking medical help might actually fare worse since they have no family network to source drugs on the black market. In short, free in North Korea often means you get what you pay for, which is nothing. Third, about your job and ration. If you're an ordinary immigrant like a homecoming ethnic Korean, you will likely be given a job by the state. Unemployment is officially non-existent. Everyone is assigned to a unit. But your foreign background may bar you from more desirable jobs, like anything politically important or in the core inner party. Many returnees in the past were put to manual labor or farm work regardless of their prior professions. One famous defector, Kang Chol-hwan, recounted how his father, a former business owner in Japan, was forced to do hard farm labor in the north, driving him into a mental breakdown. The state's logic was simple. These newcomers had to prove their loyalty and were not to be trusted with sensitive roles, so manual work was their lot. You would get a salary, but in North Korea, salaries are symbolic, often just a few thousand won that buy almost nothing due to chronic shortages. More crucial are rations, the state distribution of food and essentials, which, for an immigrant, might be scant. Historically, repatriated families often got lower ration priority than loyal locals, leading to hunger even in normal times and especially during the 1990s famine. It's a grim contrast. Western countries often debate whether immigrants can access welfare benefits. North Korea may promise you state provisions, but those provisions might be meager or non-existent. You can't exactly complain either. Being disloyal to the regime only leads you to a worse destiny. Finally, think twice if you really want your new passport. Eventually, you manage to become a North Korean citizen. Say, the state grants a returnee citizenship, or you're given some kind of residency status with papers. Congratulations! You now hold one of the world's most limited travel documents. A North Korean passport currently offers visa-free or visa-on-arrival access to only about 40 countries, ranking 92nd in global passport power. But don't worry, you likely won't get to use those visas anyway, because North Koreans themselves need exit permission to leave their country. It's not enough to have a passport. You must be granted an exit visa by your own government to travel abroad, and those aren't too easy to come by. The North Korean state tightly controls which of its citizens can see the outside world. Typically, only trusted officials, athletes, or workers on official contracts can travel, and even then, often under supervision. So if you thought you could move to North Korea for a few years and then pop out to Thailand or Malaysia for a winter vacation, think again. Once you're in, the state assumes it owns you. The irony is thick. Many immigrants move to new countries to gain a better passport or more freedom of movement. After moving to North Korea, you essentially revoke your freedom to move anywhere else. Your new passport is more like a travel restriction document. It can actually sink you by implicating you in the regime's restrictions. Any dreams of easy escape, just in case, are theoretical at best. In summary, immigrating to North Korea, if achieved, is not the beginning of a new life. It's the beginning of a new confinement. It's a bit like checking into a roach motel. You got in, but can you ever check out? The benefits promised, free housing, healthcare, a stable job for all, reveal themselves as dystopian caricatures of the real thing. You have a house, but you can't leave it or sell it. You have a hospital, but it has no medicine or electricity. You have a job, but it might kill you with overwork, and you can't quit. And above all, you have a government that will watch every step you take, grateful perhaps that you came, but also determined to mold you into yet another cog in its drab, choreographed society. North Korea does technically have an immigration law on the books, which outlines how foreigners may reside for work, study, or family reasons. But as with many North Korean laws, the letter is one thing and the reality another. The law is there to impress or to regulate the handful of sanctioned foreigners. It does not signify an open door. The overwhelming message to an ordinary person considering this journey would be, don't do it. It's a bad idea to settle in the hermit kingdom. And if you still have that dark fantasy, well, come and learn about what happened to those who believed in the North Korean dream in decades past. Spoiler alert, it often ends in heartbreak or worse.
People said North Korea it's like the paradise on earth, and people trusted that.
그래서 세상 사람들이 우리 부러워하는 거지.
옳은 말씀입니다.
More than 93,000 Zainichi Korean, that's 1 out of 6 Zainichi Korean moved to North Korea, even though they are originally from South Korea.
Now we turn to one of history's strangest mass migration episodes, the time when tens of thousands of people voluntarily immigrated to North Korea, believing they were headed to a paradise. It sounds like fiction, but it happened. Between 1959 and 1984, a sprawling campaign run by North Korea encouraged ethnic Koreans in Japan, including some Japanese citizens, to return to the motherland Korea, where, it was said, a bright future awaited them. This was the Japan DPRK Repatriation Project, often dubbed the Paradise on Earth campaign in North Korean propaganda. We need a bit of historical context here. In the late 1950s, post-war Japan had a large population of ethnic Koreans. They lived as second-class residents in Japan, facing discrimination, limited rights, and economic hardship. Neither fully accepted in Japan nor easily able to go to the divided Korea, they formed their little marginalized communities. North Korea, under Kim Il-sung, saw an opportunity. It presented itself as the true homeland for all Koreans and launched a massive propaganda effort to entice these people to migrate to the DPRK. Pamphlets, films, and recruiters from the pro-North Korean Association in Japan spread the message that North Korea was a utopian socialist haven, a place where jobs, education, housing, and dignity were guaranteed for all compatriots. The campaign's sales pitch was seductively detailed. They claimed that anything needed for life, including housing, food, medicine, and clothes, is fully guaranteed in North Korea. Images circulated of a prosperous workers' state, modern apartments, smiling families, abundant orchards. It wasn't just propaganda from Pyongyang either. The Japanese government tacitly approved the repatriation scheme. In cold terms, Japan's authorities saw it as a way to reduce a minority population they considered troublesome. As cruel as it sounds, officials in Japan and even the US looked at Koreans in Japan as communists or undesirables and were happy to see them depart to North Korea. Over the next 25 years, 93,340 people migrated from Japan to North Korea under this program. Among them were about 6,000 Japanese women who went with their Korean husbands, and even a small number of Japanese men with their Korean sweethearts. The early 1960s saw the peak. In 1960 alone, over 49,000 people made the journey. The sheer volume gave credence to the idea that this was a joyous return. Oops, such an idea cannot be more dangerously wrong. Those arrivals stepping off the ships in North Korea found almost immediately that something was terribly off. Many later recounted that the first hint was the port of Chongjin or Wonsan, where they landed. Far from a modern paradise, they saw poverty and drabness. One returnee, Eiko Kawasaki, who left Japan at 17 full of hope, recalled that upon arrival at Chongjin, she instantly realized the promises were false, but also realized she was now prevented from going back. The North Korean authorities quickly whisked the new immigrants away and essentially severed their contact with Japan. They were dispersed to various parts of the country. Letters back home were censored. Travel back was not allowed. The slogan had been Paradise on Earth, but what they got was something closer to a gulag with a coat of paint.
When I arrived at Wonsan port, I could immediately find my cousins on the port because they were wearing the clothes that we sent.
Returnees were assigned citizenship and put at the bottom of the North's rigid Songbun caste system. They were given North Korean IDs, but stamped with an unspoken label: not to be trusted. Professionals became peasants overnight. A former engineer or merchant from Japan might be sent to toil on a farm or in a mine. For instance, Hiroko Sakakibara, who moved as a young girl, described how her father, who had been a construction worker in Japan, was forced into harsh manual labor on a collective farm. The quotas were brutal, the work backbreaking. He couldn't meet the demands. Under stress and malnutrition, he suffered a mental breakdown and was locked in a psychiatric hospital, where he died in 1964, just a few years after reuniting with his motherland. Others found different forms of deprivation. Education, for example. One man, Manabu Ishikawa, moved to North Korea at 14 with his older sister in the 1970s. His sister had been excited by propaganda that anyone can study in North Korea, since in Japan she'd faced barriers to higher education. Once in the North, she eagerly asked about going to college, only to be bluntly informed that women were not allowed to pursue higher education there. Imagine the shock. They had left a discriminatory society only to find an even more discriminatory rule in the so-called egalitarian People's Republic. It was a crushing disillusionment. The oppression these returnees experienced soon equaled or exceeded what they'd faced in Japan, just in a different form. Many ended up hungry. Social discrimination was rampant. Locals sneered at the returnees as Japanese or spies. The very people promised to be welcomed as brothers were often treated as suspect outsiders. Returnees with their foreign ties and knowledge were prime targets of spy accusations. Many were accused of espionage or dissent for even mild complaints. Arbitrary penalties were common. A wrong word about life in Japan could land someone in a secret prison camp. A chilling anecdote involves the Japanese wives of Korean returnees. By the late 1960s, a number of these women who couldn't speak Korean well were profoundly unhappy and desperate to go back to Japan. According to defector testimonies, they actually staged a protest in Pyongyang, possibly the first anti-government demonstration in North Korean history. On another occasion, as recounted by defector Kang Chol-hwan, one Japanese woman even threw herself at Kim Il-sung's feet during one of his surprise inspections of a factory, begging to be allowed to return home. Kim Il-sung was said to be shocked and enraged by this scene. The regime's response was swift and ruthless. Soon after, these Japanese women and many of the associated returnee families were rounded up in the aforementioned purge of the 1970s. Large numbers were sent to detention camps or simply disappeared. By the late 1970s, the flow had dwindled as word-of-mouth warnings finally began filtering back. The last group went in 1984. After that, the project quietly ceased. Even North Korea couldn't credibly advertise itself as paradise anymore, not as it entered the crisis years of the 1990s. But by then, the damage was done. Tens of thousands of families were effectively stuck in North Korea, cut off from the world. Those who escaped the kingdom have given these horrifying accounts to the world, shedding light on what happened to the others. Immigrating to North Korea was a deceptive trap, a cruel lie. In the end, asking how to immigrate to North Korea is a bit like asking how to step into a parallel universe. The answers are fascinating in a morbid way. Be a useful instrument of the regime, bring a fortune and a willingness to lose it, or carry an ancestral tie that Pyongyang might exploit. A few have managed it, landing themselves in gilded cages or worse. History shows others were lured by lies, only to find a prison masquerading as a paradise. The tale of North Korean immigration is largely a tale of broken promises and one-way journeys. For a would-be migrant, the chilling reality is that North Korea is perhaps the closest thing to a country with a no-return policy, not only for defectors leaving, but for anyone who goes in. The closing line on this topic writes itself in human lives. In a world where most migrations are about seeking freedom or hope, immigrating to North Korea is about trading those away. It's walking into a realm where the exit door is bolted shut, where healthcare is free, but the medicine runs out. Housing is assigned, but never truly yours. In Pyongyang's grim irony, once you immigrate, you cease to be an immigrant at all. You become just another inmate. North Korea has often been called a hermit kingdom, but perhaps it's more accurate to call it a forbidden state, one that very, very few enter, and even fewer ever leave. So if you ever find yourself daydreaming about moving there, remember the voices of those who did and suffered. They urged the world to learn from their fate. Paradise on earth was a lie, and the gate to Eden was a trap. Your new life is a closed circle, drawn tight by a regime that happily welcomed you in, and will just as happily never let you out.